We just heard Boris Johnson there lay out his plans for immigration if he becomes the next Prime Minister. What's Labour's plans then? Do you want to see numbers go up or down, and what do you make of the?
Well, we should have a fair immigration system, a fair and balanced immigration system. Of course, we should. But he's imposing a tax on nurses coming from the EU and beyond to come and work here in our NHS to care for our sick and our elderly. He's going to exacerbate the staffing crisis in our NHS with his proposals. And he's also misleading the British people because he's trying to give them the impression that he's going to bring immigration down. But when you look at the details of what he's announced today, he's saying he's going to hand over decisions on who will get a visa to an independent committee. He said the committee will be independent in the same way the Bank of England is independent. So he's actually misleading people when he says he's bringing immigration down. There'll be no democratic control. There'll be no accountability over any decision that any immigration minister makes because it'll be handed over to a statutory independent committee. So again, Boris Johnson's lying to the British people.
A strong word there, lying.
Well, it is a strong word, but it is. I mean, you caught him out on the fact that he's not delivering 50,000 extra nurses, didn't you? He had to admit, because you put him under pressure, that it's only 31,000 new nurses. So again, that was a lie, and his 40 hospitals are a lie.
What's Labour's policy then?
Well, we need a...
Do you want immigration to go up or down?
But no, you want an immigration system which reflects your needs in the economy. So, for example, if a hospital thinks that a nurse or a surgeon is qualified to come here to care for our sick, to carry out operations on people who need operations, and my God, people need operations with the waiting lists at 4.5 million under the Tories, worst waiting lists ever at the moment under the Tories, then that hospital should be allowed to, those people should be allowed to come here. So you have an immigration system that reflects the needs of your economy.
So if the economy needs it, would you be happy to see immigration levels go up under a Labour government? I mean, many people would say that was absolutely reasonable position.
If the economy needs it, then of course people should come here to work in our economy, whether it's the National Health Service,
so you'd be happy to see levels go up?
Whether it's the National Health Service, where there are desperate shortages after 10 years of mismanagement by the Tories, or other parts of our economy that need people. Our care sector, we're going to talk about social care today, our social care sector runs on immigrant labour. And if the Tories are cutting off that immigrant labour from our social care sector, then our social care sector would collapse.
If you win the election, Labour's policy is to negotiate a new deal with the EU, a new Brexit deal. Would free movement of people come to an end under that deal?
Well, that depends what's in the deal, doesn't it? But what we're very clear
you'll be negotiating it.
It depends what's in that deal. I mean, but I think actually free movement has been good for the UK economy. Public services like the NHS have benefited hugely from free movement across the European Union.
So you would like Labour to go into these negotiations with a position to keep free movement?
These things will be negotiated, but it's why, for example, that we should absolutely maintain free movement for the National Health Service and the social care sector, because they are both sectors that literally could not survive if we did not continue to recruit internationally, which is why the proposal to slap a £400 tax on nurses coming from the EU is highly irresponsible from Boris Johnson.
So is there a Brexit deal that you theoretically could support personally?
Well, we'll see what gets negotiated. I mean, I've always... I've always been pretty clear that I think the United Kingdom's best interests for the future are best served by remaining within the European Union. That's why I campaigned for Remain. That's why I think that to Remain, it should be put to the people, and they should decide in the end in a referendum. I've always been clear on that.
Some people listening to you will be like, what's the point of Labour even going into these negotiations if so many people like yourselves are saying quite openly already that you think Remain is effectively the best option?
Because we lost the argument in the country, didn't we? I mean, the country voted to leave. So I think the responsible thing now is to bring both sides of the country back together and say to the country, look, this is what leave looks like, right? Because, Boris Johnson had all these sodding buses going around the country saying it'd be 350 million extra a week. Well, that never turned out to be true, did it? So this is what leave looks like. This is a credible leave, but if you don't think that is what you want for the country, here's your opportunity to remain.
Are you ruling out supporting any deal that a Labour government could?
Well, I think our country's best interests are served by remaining, but I'm also aware that the country needs to make the final decision, and in the end, it's the British people who will decide